Welcome to Constructive Conversations, Building Canada Stories. I'm your host, George Affleck. Thanks for joining me as we dig into the foundations of Canada's construction industry, learning from leaders and pioneers in the business. Today, I'm pleased to welcome back Chris Gardner from ICBA, the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association. Most people will know Chris as the president of ICBA, and he's long been an advocate for the industry as a whole, and especially the people who work in it. Let's start the conversation now. Chris, it's great to have you back again on Constructive Conversations. Thanks for being here.
George, well, it's great. Thank you. It's an honor to be here and looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, I think the thing that really resonated when we spoke last time was your passion for the industry and where it was headed. What have you seen in the last 12 months since we last spoke to really inspire you that, it's been a rough year for sure. It's maybe a bit better than the year before. I don't know. But what's really inspired you in the last 12 months within the construction industry and what you're doing every day?
Well, we just had our annual CEO breakfast that it was the first time in 2 years we were able to have it because of the COVID-19 restrictions and protocols. And so we had over 300 people come out to the breakfast, which kicks off the largest construction conference west of Toronto. And the feedback, was unanimous. It was great to be back in a room. It was great to be back meeting people in person, connecting and networking with peers and colleagues from the industry. So if you think of, that 2 year gap was very significant. And I think back to what happened 2 years ago when everything was shut down. Everything that we viewed as normal in our lives was taken away. Some industries were completely shut down. And there was a big debate that emerged at that time. And the debate was what constitutes an essential service, and should construction stay open or be shut down? And there were lots of voices who said, shut it all down. If we just close everything for 3 weeks, we'll be through COVID. It'll be in the rearview mirror. We can get on with our lives. Well, flattening the curve in 3 weeks, that's a very, very distant memory. And we all know what happened. At ICBA, our position was clear and unequivocal from the outset: keep construction open. And the reason why we took that position is because of the contribution that construction makes to our provincial economy. About 250,000 men and women woke up this morning, went to a job site in every community across this province to help build our economy and build our communities. And the work they do accounts for about 10% of our economic activity. It is the lifeline for so many individuals, families, and communities. So if the government had made a different decision, and had in fact shut it down and not deemed construction an essential service, the economic fallout would have been much more significant than it was, and it was very significant. Lots of industries suffered enormously: hospitality, tourism, restaurants, hotels. All of those sectors were devastated by the lockdowns. And so when I look at construction from that lens and what happened over the subsequent 2 years, contractors and the men and women who work in construction responded with ingenuity, creativity. They demonstrated resilience, innovation, and for the first 6 months of the shutdown, there wasn't a single case of COVID-19 transmission that Works APC had recorded on any construction work site. And so construction was able to adapt to the new protocols, work safely, and continue to build our province.
That's amazing to me. And I think that I don't know if you have some kind of magical intuition when you're out there lobbying on that kind of, to take that kind of risk early on and, to really push for keeping things open. You must have sometimes felt a bit nervous about that. I mean, we were so many unknowns at the beginning.
Yeah. There were, I think what was going through our mind was initially it was clear that where the provincial health officer was going in British Columbia and other jurisdictions was this idea of outside was better than inside, and distance was better than being closer together. And if you think of a lot of construction work, certainly in those early phases of site preparation, and you're doing the foundation work, workers are working outside. And you are able to, in many tasks, be be distant. And there's a lot of protection that's built into the natural way that construction workers work. There's use of masks in many cases, use of gloves. And so I think that all contributed to a view that said we can work safely. So construction contractors adapted. They put in more distance requirements. They put in more hand washing facilities on sites. Often contractors were taking people's temperatures, having them fill out forms, and that migrated to online. The ability to go online and fill out your daily safety check, and so I think it worked well. And I think under extremely challenging circumstances, we saw one of the big things we saw coming out of as we went through COVID and now coming out of it was the stress and pressure contributing to much higher incidence of challenges with mental health across our entire economy.
Yeah.
And so they have construction workers working. They had an outlet. Lots of other industries, there was nothing. Not only was all your recreation, entertainment, schooling taken away, but your job was taken away. So that was an enormous amount of stress.
True. And I want to get into the mental health stuff because the stuff you guys are doing at ICBA is amazing, and I want to get into that. But there is some issues that we talked about last time, and this was in the middle of the pandemic, as we hope, out of the pandemic. One of the challenges, not only from you that I've heard, but from everybody I've spoken to on Constructive Conversations, is labor shortage, big issue. Obviously, that's gotten even worse, not only with the pandemic because of immigration just being stopped for a while, and now we have what's happening in Europe with Ukraine, and then we have the supply chain issues, which was partly the pandemic had to do with that. We have inflation, but the war is obviously that's happening. The battle over in Russia and Ukraine is having an effect on our supply chains. China's going back into lockdown. It's like, supply chain, labor, inflation. How is ICBA managing that, and what are you guys doing to really, when it comes to those issues? Are you as intuitive and as you were in the beginning of the pandemic, because these are big issues for the industry?
Yeah, it is a perfect storm, and you've set the table very well for what's happening. And what it means is that every year we do an annual survey of our 3,600 members and clients, and we ask them about what's happening. How do they view the coming year in terms of the important trends? What's top of mind? And for the last decade, and we've done the survey for over 30 years, the shortage of people. And the challenges around project approval, the length of time it takes, the rules, regulations, and red tape that slow down the project approval process. Those two have been in the top two for a very, very long time. What's new this year was supply chain and mental health challenges. And so, fully 76% of our members are saying they can't find enough people. The competition for talent is intense. And so if you just look at that, because that's rippling through the entire economy, and it's not just in Canada, BC or Canada, it's in North America, it's across the globe. And we are, and Canada's compounded a little bit by the fact that we're going over a demographic cliff. We have an aging population. There just aren't enough Canadians entering the workforce. And so if you strip out immigration, Canada's population is flatlining, and then it will start to decline. And that's a recipe for economic disaster. So our long-term economic prosperity is at risk. And so there's two levers we have. And they're both not short-term fixes. One is the use of technology and innovation. So doing more work in new ways, innovative ways with less people. And the second is immigration. And so neither of them are easy fixes. There's going to be an adjustment. But it's clear that that shortage of people is putting significant upward pressure on wages and compensation. And that goes to the bottom line of contractors, and it's a cost that ripples through to the first-time home buyer.
Of course.
And then, so when you look at supply chain, it started off. Everyone will remember, about just a little over a year ago, there was a pretty sharp snapback in terms of our economic activity coming out of that first year of COVID. And the supply chains had constricted so much they couldn't keep up. And one of the key findings of as we come out of COVID was that we'd gone into this, with this global supply chain network, globalization, and some of those trends will continue on, but not to the same extent. There's a real purposeful, deliberate effort now to bring the supply chain closer to home, to de-risk your business by purchasing goods and materials as close to home as you can, to ensure that you're not dealing with risk in other markets, other countries, with shipping, whatever those logistics are that are now compounding the challenges around supply chain and pushing costs up. And those supply chain pressures are also now another added cost that feeds into the construction, the cost of homes, and who ends up paying the freight for this? The first-time home buyer. So there's all of these issues, whether it's project approvals, a shortage of people, supply chain issues, that are ending up in the lap of the consumer. And whether you're going to be buying other goods and services or whether you're looking for a home, the prices are moving up quite significantly. And so that affordability challenge in the short term, very little in the way of relief, I think, is coming to consumers and first-time home buyers.
And it's interesting. So it's sort of like when you talk about that buying and trying to consume the goods locally, that's sort of the 100-mile diet. But in construction, I would imagine that Canada benefits because we have a lot of the resources you need. We just don't necessarily do a finished product here. Lumber and things like that. Quite often we export the raw goods. So you're saying we need to start thinking about really doing finished products here and to sell them locally. That's another whole other industry that could grow.
Yeah, and none of this is short term. None of this is easy to do. If you're going to decide, for example, if you're a construction contractor and you've been sourcing your rebar from Asia or from a market in Europe, okay, well, let's try and source that materials from the U.S., for example, or maybe in Canada. In Canada and Western Canada, there's only one source of significant supply for rebar, and that's a steel mill in Edmonton that probably provides about 15% of the rebar that comes into British Columbia. And then after that, you've got the other 85% of that rebar is coming from the United States and other markets, not from Eastern Canada, where we have steel mills. And the reason why is because as a result of globalization, it's been cheaper to source rebar from markets overseas because it's cheaper to put rebar on a container, in containers on a ship, than it is to put it on rail cars in Ontario and ship it out to British Columbia. It doesn't sound like that would be the case, but it is the case. Right. And so there's going to have to, if we're going to go through this recalibration, it's going to come with some cost, additional cost, again, to consumers, to first-time home buyers. So the ripple effects of how this is going to play out are going to be significant. But I don't think in the short term, there's going to be a lot of immediate relief in terms of folks who are looking to get into the housing market or folks who may be in the market are looking to buy up.
The Prime Minister recently spoke in Vancouver about addressing affordability in this region specifically. He didn't give any, I don't think, the details that we'd like to see. We hear city governments talking about it. We hear the province here in BC talking about it. Affordability has become, it's not just a Vancouver issue, but it certainly is much more challenging in British Columbia than other provinces. But, I think across Canada, affordability is becoming a problem, especially when you talk about these things like supply chain and getting access to talent. What could government be doing, whether it be provincial, local, or federal? What kind of things would you like to see the Prime Minister, when he makes these sort of somewhat generic announcements, what possibly could they do related to affordability? Is there policies that they can create that will help? I'm skeptical, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think consumers have a good reason to be skeptical. You get those, when you hear the phrase "I'm from the government, I'm here to help," you should be very skeptical, and you start running in the other direction. But I think one of the challenges we have is that an idea that's gained a lot of currency in Ottawa and Victoria and in local governments is this view that we can tax our way to affordability. We can tax our way to a stronger, more competitive economy. And it's not working. It's proven itself out to not be not having a significant. If it were that easy, we would have the cheapest housing in the world, given where we are in terms of levels of taxation. And the reality is that governments are reluctant, for political reasons, to look at some of the most basic things that they could do to relieve pressure, and supply is a big issue here. It is inconceivable that someone could look at the challenge with the price of homes and not come to the conclusion that a big part of the issue is supply. It may not be the only issue, because there's costs of labor, the
Sure.
cost of construction is going up, but certainly supply is a big factor that's driving the affordability challenge. And so, how does that? What can a local government do? Well, in Metro Vancouver and a lot of other major centers in British Columbia, it takes about 4 years to approve and permit a residential housing project. So 4 years, that's as long as it takes to build the project, or longer in some cases. So why is that? Why can't governments move faster? Why can't they cut some of that red tape, some of that regulation, and get supply onto the market across all types of housing faster than they can do right now? And if by not being able to do that, that is one of the most significant contributors to the high cost of housing. And so much so that the World Bank every year ranks advanced economies. And in terms of the length of time it takes to process a construction permit, Canada ranks number 64 in the world. So if you just think of that, there are 63 other countries in the world that process construction permits faster than Canada. We are, a G7 country, top, in terms of our the size of our economy, number 10, 11, 12 in the world, but we're number 63 in the length of time it takes to process a construction permit. It's embarrassing, but it's also a contributor to the affordability issue. And governments need to really, if they want to have an impact, they've got to look at that issue and deal with it in a significant way.
The word supply, though, has become so political. I mean, the people, how dare you call my home a product, or describe it as a supply and demand kind of commodity? It's my home. And you see that certainly on a local level, this battle between the supplyists, which, is there, and the people who are saying, we've zoned enough for the predicted growth of our region or city or whatever it might be. We're done. Let's just start building, and so they're kind of both. The more supply is great, but if you don't build it, it doesn't matter. So how do we deal with these? So I guess it touches on that issue, the length of time, and we see here in BC, we have the minister responsible provincially sort of attacking cities, saying you guys need to do a better job. But then you look at what the federal and provincial governments have done regarding construction themselves, and at that breakfast you mentioned earlier, I think one of the interesting points that was made was in these smaller communities, especially up north in these remote areas, you can't get construction companies. They can't afford to build there. They can't get there. They don't have the staff. And so maybe the government should be looking at that as a specific task. Or it seems like asking government to be nimble is a big ask. But obviously them getting out of the housing game many, many years ago, federally especially, has had an impact.
Yeah, I think that the challenge we have is that we want our cake and eat it too. So we are at a broad, if you look at it from the view of neighborhoods and average citizens running around living their lives, there's a fear of density. And so we can talk about lack of supply and the cost of housing, but as soon as a project is proposed, the forces of no come out, and they'll go to city council. It could be 10, 20, 30, 40, a couple of hundred, and say, we need more housing, but I don't like this townhome project in my neighborhood, or I don't like this high-rise condominium tower or condo tower in my neighborhood because of traffic, noise, people. And so there's this pushback against density, and it has taken us, I think, far too long to build density around SkyTrain stations. We're starting to move in that direction, and I think in a very positive way. But if you look at major cities around the world, far more density than there is in Vancouver. You don't have to. You can get in your car and leave downtown Vancouver, and 20 minutes down the road, you're in farmers' fields in Richmond. And so we really need to look at density in a very different way. And if we don't do that, if we don't build more and we don't build it faster, and we don't look at density as a solution, then we are condemning ourselves to the challenge that we're in. And report after report after report will come out and say that the price of housing is decoupled from incomes, and there's going to be a correction in Canada or Vancouver of 20% over the next 18, 24 months. We read that every year. There's a couple of reports about The Economist. Oxford Economics came out with one last week, and it never happens. They've been saying that for the last 25 years in the Lower Mainland. It has not happened. And we're constrained by geography. We do have, the data team at Rennie said last week that, for people who are moving up, they're already in a home, but they're going to buy a larger home. 35% of those individuals are getting, on average, $300,000 from their parents, from family wealth transfers to help make that move. That's something that a lot of observers aren't really tracking or understanding, how the dynamics of this market are working differently than maybe some other markets.
That injection of wealth has an impact on cost. I mean, that's for sure. If you don't have that $300,000, you're in trouble for
That's
sure.
right.
And getting into the market is a challenge. So we have to take that into account. I want to change angles here, because I think one of the things that's really close to your heart, and you touched it briefly earlier, is the work the ICBA has been doing regarding mental health and wellness in the workplace and in the construction industry specifically. Let's talk about that for a moment, because I think the ICBA is doing a ton of things to assist what the challenges that the industry has. Maybe you can tell me a bit about the successes you've seen since we last spoke, because there's been a big launch of that campaign, and you spoke briefly about it when I was at that breakfast. But tell me a bit about the successes and what's really getting you excited about the importance of this and how well it might work.
Yeah, mental health is something that it's only in recent, the last 10, 15 years that we've really started to open up in terms of having conversations about recognizing the significant health challenge that people who are struggling with mental wellness issues are presenting. It's pervasive, but it's been runs very deep, but it's been running very silent. And, the stats are sobering. 1 in 4 Canadians are suffering from a challenge related to mental health, mental wellness. So if you just think of that, everybody knows more than 4 people. So that means that everybody knows someone. It could be a friend, a family member, a colleague who's struggling in some way with a mental health challenge. And it may even be themselves. But we're reluctant to talk about. We will talk about anything else. We'll talk about divorce. We'll talk about a cancer diagnosis. We'll talk about someone being injured in an accident, but we won't talk about mental health and mental wellness related issues. And so the whole focus of our program is to normalize the conversation, to make it easier for someone who's struggling to put up their hand and say, hey, I need some help. And to make it easier for someone who's on the receiving end of that request to say, okay, here's what you need to do. Go talk to, if in a larger company, go talk to this person in our HR department, or here's the toll-free number for an employee assistance program, or wherever you're going to direct that person, that it's a normal interaction. It's not something people need to be afraid of. And the numbers in construction are sobering. A suicide rate that's 5 times the national average. 55% of the people who are dying of an opioid overdose have at one point in their career worked in construction. So as we went through the pandemic, we sort of sat down as teams, we've got to do something. There's lots of materials out there, lots of supports out there, but a lot of it's not geared towards the construction worker. So we're not reinventing the wheel. What we're doing, though, is presenting it in a way that's meaningful and impactful for the construction workforce. The graphics, the designs, the themes, the language that we use, how the materials are presented are all built with a focus of the construction worker at the center of that program. And so right now, and we rolled it out in June of last year. We offered it free to ICBA members and their employees. We have now over more than 6,000 workers, individuals who are enrolled in that program. The second phase of drawing attention to this challenge was we announced Corey Hirsch, former Vancouver Canucks goaltender, former goaltender for Team Canada in the Winter Olympics, and went on to he was the starting goalie in the gold medal game, and they ended up winning after an overtime shootout, a silver medal. But Corey Hirsch has a compelling story, and so he is the ICBA Wellness Ambassador. And if you think of the similarities between, in this case, NHL hockey, it's a male workforce. Construction, over 90% of construction workers on sites are male. And so lots of similarities in terms of the strong male, just head down, get through it, work through your pain, have your breakdown on the
injury
weekend.
prone. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Be back in the office or on site or on the rink Monday morning kind of thing. So, so I think his personal story and struggles is a message that I think resonates with construction workers. And everything we're doing with mental health related in our wellness program is free for ICBA members and their employees.
And Corey's been so, I mean, I've heard him speak, and his honesty is almost shocking about his experience. And I think when you talk about being able to talk about this problem, having somebody who is putting himself out there, it's certainly inspiring, and not only to me, I think, but anybody, especially if you're talking about these dudes who are, say, I'm fine, I don't need any help. Hey, it's okay to ask if you feel you're stressed out or whatever, or you have an injury that you can't work through and you need to figure that out. I mean, that's the challenge, and I think so.
Yeah, he was at the age of 21, he was on the New York Rangers when they won the Stanley Cup. Lifted the Stanley Cup, won a silver medal in the Winter Olympics. All of those highs early in his career, but he was a wreck. He was, and if you listen to his story, there were numerous times when he seriously contemplated taking his own life. So it's an important story. It's an important message, because the lessons that you can learn from listening to Corey are directly applicable to the situations that so many people face in construction, but not only in construction. I mean, this challenge runs through every part of our economy, every part of our society, our community, and families. So the more we talk about it in a more normal way, and remove that stigma, the more people are going to get the supports they need, and the more lives will be saved.
Amazing. And I think it's anybody who hasn't had a chance to go check out the website and see all the materials that are there and all the information. I highly encourage them, because you guys are doing a great job in that. Speaking of membership, the last decade, I think the ICBA perhaps has evolved a lot. How has membership changed from, what it looked like 10 years ago? And you've been now, 5 or so years, I think, with the ICBA. How is it evolving? How's the industry changing? How's the association changing, as far as the members and what, the mental health stuff is just a whole other service you offer as an example. But how is the membership changing, and what you do for the membership?
Yeah, I think so. We touched on mental health a lot. That's a program offering, a service offering that we weren't offering just 2 years ago. So if you were looking at this, how's ICBA changed? If you went back a decade, the industry and ICBA are changing in very significant ways. There's more women involved in the construction workforce. That has been a real focus of construction contractors, of certainly ICBA and other associations, to have more of a focus on presenting trades opportunities as career paths for women. More Indigenous people are pursuing a career in the trades. in a more deliberate and concerted way. It's similar to the focus on attracting women. There's a focus on attracting people from a wide range of backgrounds, and certainly Indigenous communities. There's more and more apprentices who are now Indigenous. And so that's a significant change. We're seeing it right now, a generational change. A lot of the folks who have been in construction for the last, 30, 40 years are moving on. They're retiring and they're handing on the business to either, in some cases, it's family members. In some cases, it's others who've come behind them and are now running those companies. So you're seeing a definite demographic shift in terms of who the leadership is in the construction industry. That presents both an opportunity and there is significant change because of that. It's also a little bit of a challenge because you've got a lot of knowledge and expertise that's now leaving the industry. And the challenge is to make sure that that's incorporated and so that it's not lost. So I think that's that would be a significant change in the industry. There's a focus on safety. Construction, there are aspects of construction are very high risk. The industry continues to look at ways to ensure that at the end of the day, everybody goes home safely. And there's been remarkable advances in safety. And then technology. Technology is starting to construction is, you're building a building and there's a lot of construction that doesn't seem to change. And it's often viewed as a sector that's a little bit of a slow adopter. But I was at a construction conference in the United States 3 weeks ago, and there was a venture capital investor from Silicon Valley who gave a presentation and said, over the last 5 years, $25 billion has been invested in software applications directly for the construction industry. That's $25 billion invested in construction technology over the last 5 years. And so technology is now changing the way we're doing work, that sub-trades and general contractors are interacting with engineers and architects. It's having a big impact. And it will be one of those things. It's, a lot of drivers. One is the efficiency and productivity, safety, but shortage of people, right? Doing more work with less people. So the same kind of forces that we're seeing across the economy in terms of technology are now being incorporated in the construction sector. So I think those 4 or 5 big trends are going to shape construction going forward.
So that's for the next 5 years. That's kind of what you predict will still remain the focus for the industry and for the association. And for construction companies that are members, they should be preparing themselves for those things, looking at those kinds of softwares that are out there, and really checking in with you guys. You guys have lots of great webinars on this stuff. Really get yourself trained up, and especially if you're transitioning to either your kids are taking over or you're selling the business, but making sure that you're ready for the future.
Yeah, that's a big, big theme. And I think as an association, we also have a big health and dental plan business. We have 125,000 people who are on one of our plans. That's an easy way for a construction company to support the work we do at ICBA. And it's simple. Everyone has health and dental benefits. So rather than, supporting, a health and dental provider that's sort of may or may not really care about what's happening in construction to the extent that we do, by getting on one of our plans, you're directly helping an association that wakes up every day thinking about and working on issues that are important to construction contractors. And then the policy advocacy side. The one thing that, as an individual company, you're running your business, you're winning work, you're executing that work, you're trying to find people, you're training people. You're not thinking day to day about what governments are doing, or in some cases not doing, to help the industry. And that's something that we do a lot of thinking about. So, and sometimes it's the stronger ICBA is, the more members we have, the bigger our voice, the bigger impact we can have when we go into the hallways of government and say, this isn't working out well. You've got to do, this, and this, or this, what you're thinking about is actually going to hurt construction, not help it. So we would recommend this. All of that, it's important. The more members we have and gives us a stronger voice and a voice to say things that as an individual contractor or company, you may not want to say, you may not feel comfortable saying, but it's kind of safety in numbers. So we're a little bit of a shield as much as a sword sometimes. So I think that's something that's important for contractors to keep in the back of their mind about why it's important to be supporting, an ICBA or another business association that they may be involved in.
Yeah, you're really a partner. I think for a lot of these businesses, when you look at mental health care, out there banging on doors in government, focusing on so many different aspects, technology and all these different things. So you really are a partner, I think.
Yeah, and listen, we train over 5,000 people a year in our professional development courses offerings that we have, because the shortage of people and the competition for talent is so intense, training the people you have, ensuring that they're learning the skills they need to learn to do the job and to excel in their careers, it's vitally important. And so we help our members and partners do that through the professional development courses that we offer.
And with that, Chris, I want to thank you for joining me today on Constructive Conversations.
Great. Well, thank you, George. Appreciate the opportunity.
I'm George Affleck. Thanks for joining me at Constructive Conversations, Building Canada Stories, where we dig into the foundations of Canada's construction industry, learning from leaders, pioneers in the business.